This is ACOFAE. Laura Marie and Jessica Marie proudly present A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, a podcast. Fair warning, everything the hosts say is explicit, full of spoilers and adult content and shall not be used against them. They have opinions. Let's try not to drag anyone for expressing themselves and just have fun for an hour. We all deserve it.
This episode does not contain any spoilers, but does mention The Last Refuge, Chronicles of Narnia, and Pretty Little Liars. For a full list, please see show notes.
Everybody, and welcome to A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, your weekly deep dive into the fantasy, literature, and fandoms that we love. I'm Laura Marie.
And I'm Jessica Marie.
And today we are welcoming a very special guest and our new friend, Christina Bacilieri,
who is the YA author of her debut novel, The Last Refuge. Welcome, Christina.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Christina Bacilieri, YA fantasy author of The Last Refuge. It's my debut novel in the Stealing Sanctuary series.
We are so excited to have you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
I cannot wait to start. I have been looking forward to this one for a long time. I just love y'all's dynamics, so I cannot wait.
We're so happy to have you.
Thank you.
So I feel like right off the bat, this is your debut novel, and it's YA. What was the inspiration? Like, where did it start? Have you always wanted to be a writer? Like, tell us your journey.
Well, so it kind of goes way back. When I was a kid, I struggled with reading. I am dyslexic. So I had a reading teacher in my school. I was very lucky to have Miss Wrench, and she helped me work through it. And then I was reading 2 grades above my level, fell in love with reading. I relied a lot on my imagination before that because it was very embarrassing to admit that I did not understand the words on the page. And I don't know about you guys, but in grade school, kids can be rough. And it's just, and I mean, again, it's because everybody's trying to figure themselves out. And I think it can be really difficult for kids to understand that, hey, it's okay to embrace differences. You do not have to attack. But for me, it seemed like I was very unintelligent. I had a teacher that was like, no, your brain just processes words different. We worked through it. And then I fell in love with reading. And my grandma was my hero. She has always been my hero, and I love her very much. She would take me to the library. And so I, at a very young age, after I started working through this dyslexia, fell in love with reading. And then I will say I definitely dabbled in writing. My first writing was Mario fan fiction. I have an older brother who actually would play, him and my cousins would play the game. And I was like, why is Peach not this main character? So I wrote Mario fan fiction, made Peach the main character, and then have just always loved reading ever since. It's got me through the toughest times in my life. And then I realized, into my late 20s, this can actually be something that you do. And so when my grandma was diagnosed with cancer, we were all going through, COVID. It was a tough time. I decided, okay, this has found me. And I had a dream where I saw Kiera crossing the border into Etabon. And I decided, okay, I'm going to write this story. It's time.
Wow. Okay.
I know. I was like, wait, there's so many things.
There's so many things, but I want to jump on this last part here just because it's the thing I heard the last. She came to you in a dream, fully formed, fully personality, ready to go. Please elaborate on this. You can't just drop that and walk away.
Well, it was more so I've always been somebody, and I find this really lucky because I work through a lot of things in my dreams, and usually I can manipulate dresses, and it's that vivid dreaming. This, when I was a backseat, I saw this line of all these people, and they were humans, and then they started crossing over this threshold and turning into werewolves and orcs and fauns. And then I was, I guess, over Kiera's shoulder, and then she turned into her magical form. And I knew, I have goosebumps right now thinking about the dream. I learned more about her when I woke up. But it was just this is who you're telling the story about. And I think for me, of my entire childhood, I was obsessed with Narnia and the creatures and different worlds. And I lived in my imagination a lot. So I think it's just been forming in my head for a really long time. And then I was going through a rough patch in my life and it was like, okay, now here's here. Again, I did a lot more development after the dream, but I did see her, what she looked like, her magical form. And then obviously the festival grounds was really cool. And I was like, what am I dreaming about? And so I just wrote that down when I got up.
So you literally lived a dream, this project, and when you woke up, you're like, I need to get this on paper because this is something, and working through your own things through it too.
Yeah. And I think writing the book was really healing for me because I wrote it at a really tough time and there's really strong female characters in the book. And I always wanted my grandma to read the finished product. Obviously she passed before that happened, but she lives in these pages. And I worked through some really tough stuff because I was like on the journey with Kiera. So, and it also brought me back to like when I was 16 and dealing with that. So I think it was such a great adventure for me too, to have this dream. And also I think a dream realized, because I don't know if you kind of always look back at these points in your life. And I don't know if things hadn't happened in the succession that they did, if I would be a writer. I don't know if I would have had the courage to pick up a pen and say, no, I am going to publish a novel. So I do think that dream and everything going on around it was the catalyst.
And how did you publish this novel? I mean, this flow is just glorious. How did this happen? So you had this, I cannot believe this amazing story. Like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. This is so cool. So you had this dream, you have this character, you have to get it on paper. What was that like? Did you just like sit down in front of the typewriter and just go? I say typewriter. I'm in my torture poets era.
Oh, if we can always drop a T Swift reference. Yes. Oh, I decided to handwrite it because I wasn't really sure. Yeah. Beginning, I had a journal and I just started handwriting it. And I was like, this is my secret. I'm never going to show this to anybody. Okay. It's going nowhere. It's just like this dream is dogging me. Kiera is very persistent, which makes sense for her character. She's very curious and she's like, no, you will pay attention to me. And I showed it to my mom. I finally got the courage to show it to somebody and she read it. And she was like, are you continuing with this? Like, this is really great.
She's like, give me more. I want part 2.
Yeah. So yeah, I just started handwriting it. And then she was like, you should transition it over because my brain, my neurodivergent brain can be very like scattered. And she was like, maybe you should start typing it, like type it. And I'm really glad she said that because moving all those words over just that beginning was so much work, but I'm really glad I got it handwritten, got it out. But then I moved it over to the computer and it just started flowing out of me. So.
Oh, do you still have your handwritten copy?
Yes.
Is it safe like forever? Like do something special with it? Yeah.
Yes, I have it. Well, and it's funny. I have it and it's just like, I dated it too. Like I was like, wrote the date. And then I also have my horribly drawn maps of like my doodles. I was like, that looks like a rocket ship. Like, I'm so glad that I went to somebody who is amazing to do the map. But yeah, I have all of like my crazy, like, I don't know, like 7 different journals from that time of writing ideas, but the first couple of chapters of the novel.
So with the ideas and with the dream framework that was the catalyst to it all, would you say like you leaned more pantser or plotter, or is it kind of a little bit in between because there's a lot of moving pieces right now?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good point. So the first novel, I was mostly a pantser because it was like, let me just get this out. Now that I'm into book 2, I'm definitely plotting. And I say I'm a planster because it's like I try, at my core, I think that I am a discovery writer. So if a character wants to do something, I will let them do it and just kind of see where it goes. Like, so if I have a bullet point, it's like, okay, Kiera, you're going to go do this, like in book 2. And she's like, no, thank you. And I'm going to do this instead. I let it happen. But now I've gotten to the point where I'm plotting out and I know how book 3 is going to end. That scene came to me and then recently I wrote it down. I'm supposed to be working on book 2 and I wrote that. I was like, okay, fine.
Let me at least get this out. Like, so I don't forget it.
Exactly. So I wrote that all out. But yeah, I definitely try to plan more now. But again, as I go, if something comes to me, I will write that because again, it's just really easy to get it out of you and then go back and edit it rather than because I've found that if I tell myself that's not good enough or if that's not working and I don't just get it out, then I'm going to kind of be discombobulated. So I just kind of let myself write it out. And then if I need to take it out or change, then I'll go that route.
Do you enjoy the editing process?
I love developmental editing. I love that nebulous idea creating. It's very playful. It's fun. You can create so many different things. I have a hard time, and I think it goes back, and I've worked through this a lot, but I think it goes back to the dyslexia. Sometimes I get very nervous about grammar, and I love to change words. And that's why I think technology is so amazing now because you can listen to the story once you've written it. And I love to change reveal and revel, these types of words. But copy editing is really hard for me. My brain sometimes just does not. It's like I've gone over this sentence 3 times. That's where editors come in and they're amazing because they can help you. But I love developmental editing. Copy and proof is the bane of my existence. So,
well, I think I want to bring up here something important that you said earlier about your teacher and saying that your brain just functions differently. Anybody who has, and so often until we changed that language, it was pinned, at least on us when we were growing up, that it was something was wrong with you. And it's important to say nothing is wrong with you. You just, there's just a different learning approach. And that's, and look how much you embraced it. You're oh, well, if I just have to navigate it a different way, I love it. And it's also the importance, like you were saying with hearing a story, that audiobooks are books because it allows that access and that ease to enjoy the story and the art form that it comes in, that you've brought to life.
Yeah, I think it's so beautiful because I think I was really lucky. My teacher changed my life because I did exactly what you're saying. I felt very broken. I felt unintelligent. And it was really confusing because I'd want to read the story out loud like everybody else. And now I can read in any form. I love audiobooks. I can read physical books, ebooks. Whereas I think if somebody hadn't taken the time to say, hey, no, you're not broken. That isn't a thing at all. You just process the world differently and you just need different tools to navigate it. It's my brain is still a brain. It just processes the world differently. And I've embraced that because I do think if everybody was the same, how boring would our world be? There's so many different perspectives. And I think that's beautiful, but I just needed somebody to see me and say, hey, this is great. We're just going to give you the tools to operate differently than everybody else. So
shout out to the educators out there who can pinpoint that.
Teachers.
Yeah.
Yes, love them. You guys are amazing. Yep. Thank you for everything you do. So.
Well, and I can see this concept that you have mirrored in your book too, because it's when we're going to talk loose plot here. We're going to keep this relatively spoiler free, but there's magical forms and people are transformed into their magical form. And this change of perspective then that happens is life altering for that person and really just for everybody involved. And while we're kind of on the topic there, you brought up your map, which I just love to talk about. Can we discuss the framework, the structure of how you built your world here? We have this magic system. We have this world. We have this map. We have lots of there's politics going on. Can you kind of break that down for us? I love to know how authors come up with this stuff.
So I imagine it in a parallel universe. So my land masses are kind of similar to ours. And I just knew that I wanted the magic element to flow in through the universe and into the beings that populate the planet. And this idea of cutting these beings off from this flow of magic and stifling it is destroying the planet. So this idea of stifling individuality, the oppressive regime, so it's called the ruling board, and a ruler from each continent makes up that board. So there's 6 continents. We've got the 6 horrible, cruel leaders. And so I knew I wanted it to be very, again, tight control. So you go to this place and it's this embracing of crossing over, and then you get even your magic is specific to who you are. Plus, I love dystopian novels. I grew up on them. So I knew I wanted to add that kind of dystopian, almost sci-fi element along with the fantasy.
Well, you see that when you talk about the board and like stifling who you are, because isn't it so often not even like in this, the conformity that comes with government expectations and societal expectations in a way too.
And you see Kiera struggle with that idea that she is trying so very hard to keep herself in this box, like checked, like I am a good student, I am a good citizen, don't look too long here, keep moving, where inside she's fragmenting. She knows there's this, magic, there's something calling to her, but she's trying so hard to ignore it. She's like, she keeps having these dreams. And again, most kids either, they don't really get the dreams or they stop having them after 5. And so for Kiera, she's still having these dreams. And I adore her mom. I adore Rose and the way she approaches like, hey, like, this is okay. This is our secret. Because I do think, unfortunately, in this society that, in Atera, in this world, it's like you have to pretend not to be something that you really are. And that happens to us in this world where there are things so true to us that we feel that we cannot share. It makes us too different, makes us too other, which is really unfortunate because if we share our differences, we realize that this world is so beautiful. We are just people who want to be seen and loved. That is at our core. We have these differences, but inside we're very much similar. So I definitely wanted to play on that with the oppressive regime and that fear element and fragmenting everybody. Because again, you have the class system where it's like, they try very hard to kind of turn everybody against each other because if everyone's infighting, there's no unity and they can't rise up and get freedom. So I definitely wanted to play on that as well.
Well, and 2 parts here. I was going to say you see also the responsibility aspect that some kids, I say kids, like where we all, with parental figures in their life that you feel a responsibility to, Kiera says, my mom's working 3 shifts. She's kept me protected. I'm totally going against, but like, this is what I feel like is right. I want to contribute. And like, there's a level of guilt that we carry if we don't act and conform a certain way, that is expected from our parents. And then to follow like separately from what you were saying, you see that right away with, Kiera and Cassidy, like, Kiera has better test scores. So that automatically isolated, she messed up the bell curve there in school. And now she is subjected to a different career path where she too is not accepted by her parents.
Right. Well, and you think about it too, of this pitting against each other, this idea of, and that's why with Cassidy, you see Cassidy make some really horrific decisions. And I think that's a human being in their worst desperation. Cassidy does some terrible things, but I think if you look at her, it's like, oh, she's doing that because she thinks she has no other option. And it's because this oppressive regime has pitted these kids and adults against each other. So I do think it is unfortunate because Kiera feels different in many ways. And I think what was so hard for me to write was this. There's one scene where she finally is able to breathe and then she's like, oh, there's hope. And she feels this group of kids has accepted her. And that that got me so hard writing that scene because I think in all respects, you can tell these kids have, each of them, you get a little bit, but you see they're all kind of struggling with something. And it's like, they all just want to maybe have a glimpse of something incredible and beautiful because they live in this dark, rough world where you have to toe the line and have to get this score, even Cassidy's parents, they pretty much want to disown her because she didn't get the scores and the career path that both of them expected for her.
Well, and we're talking about kids, like we're mentioning kids. This is YA. My question for you, I am just curious. I'm just thinking about this right now. Did you set out to write like a YA novel? Like, did you want these kids to be this age? I know I have heard in other places that the teenage years are the years of like the revolution, the change, the no fear. Like that's when like the stories happen and you gain fear as you get older. So like the teenage years, let's channel all that angst, I guess. I love it. So was that your intention at the get-go? Like, yes?
Yes. I think one of the reasons I knew YA is because it had such an impact on me. And I think it was kind of a love letter back to YA and what it did for me. And I think the story just fit because, again, Kiera does make some decisions that a 25-year-old, a 35-year-old would be like, I'm going to have a chat with, like my parental figure or my friends before I try to take the world on my shoulders. But I think that's what's really beautiful. And I think also why teens love YA, but also adults of YA, because you go back and you realize I had all of those emotions. I was really open to the world. I was open to making mistakes and trying things. And I think that's kind of the nostalgia when we go back and we read YA and it's like, oh yeah, like I was pretty fierce. Like some of the decisions we make in our teens don't always work out, but I do think there are times that we grab life and we forge forward and it changes the whole trajectory of our life. And I think that's why it's so beautiful for me to read YA. One, YA fantasy, I'm obsessed with magic and I think that's so cool. But I think that's why it felt really right for this story.
Yeah, I feel like there's a level of like when you're in those years, like impossibility doesn't feel impossible.
Yeah. Yeah, like the world is open, like you are open. So it is just a really interesting time. And I think there's so much you can do with a storyline because it's also like, it is always funny to be like, why didn't they tell their parents? And it's like, do you remember being 16 and what you felt like you could? Things I think are going in the general direction where people are more open to like discussing like mental health and bodies and things like this now. But even like, it was hard to talk to parents. You couldn't just be like, hey, this is what's going on. You felt,
growing up now.
Yeah.
Still don't say anything now.
Still.
Yeah. And I think we're doing a lot of work now to take shame out of like, we're really doing that work. And I think that's really what I also wanted to key in on in the book, because there is just so much shame and that's what keeps us in these boxes. For Kiera, it's like she was, again, lucky that she had her mom to talk to. But again, I do think it's like that when you're in this world that stifles you, it's shame is such a big driver of not being able to embrace and go on the journey of self-discovery because you're like, oh, I can't step a toe out of line.
And also, I mean, yes, to everything you're saying, of course, everything is perfect. The fact that Kiera though does want to talk to her mom,
mm-hmm.
and does actually tell her. I mean,
even the bad, I say the bad thing, the choice that she made, she made, she was just like, she came home and her mom knew. She's like,
it's just like,
I messed up.
Yeah,
here's what happened, and I was like, and to what you said, you're like. She told her. She told her the thing.
She told her.
And was honest.
She actually told her.
And her mom was like, this is a problem that we're going to have to fix together.
Which was amazing. Like, this isn't Pretty Little Liars. Like, the parents and the daughter working I love it. We love this. And also the, like, unconditional support, too, where Rose is like, ooh, yeah, but as you said, yes. No way but forward. Like, and we'll go together. Like, I'm not going to sit here and berate you over this. Yeah. Let's fix it together. Yeah, let's move on together.
That was so my grandma. Like, it was like I'm like, it's funny when somebody loves you unconditionally. It just blows your mind because it's like, you can say things to them that you can't say to anybody else. And it's so funny because I think of this book, like every time I crossed, thresholds are a big thing for me, like the symbology of thresholds. And every time I crossed that door into my grandma's house, I'm like, oh, I can take all this armor off and just be me and be silly and loud and tell stories. And like, I think if there was something that I felt, oh, I probably shouldn't say this to anybody else, I could say it to my grandma and she'd still love me and she'd still give me advice. And it's like, let's eat some pasta and talk about this. So I think that's with Kiera and Rose. I think that's why also Kiera's character, there's some naivety there, but I do think that's why she's pretty strong because Rose has given her the tools to say, hey, I messed up. Instead of like hiding, she could come to her mom and her mom's like, hey, look, like one of my favorite lines, or kind of that scene that we're talking about is when Rose says, like, in life, we are going to make choices that are going to disappoint ourselves or the people we love. And we just do the best with what we have. That is all we can do. And I was like, oh, that's a grandmaism right there. Like, like that is, I mean, it's true. Like we are like in like life, like we're not always going to make the best choices, or we're not going to make the best choices for other people, but we made the best choice for ourselves. So I think that idea of being able to at least talk to somebody, a figure in your life who loves you unconditionally, is very freeing. For me, it changed my life. Like if I didn't have my grandma, I do not know where I would be. Like it was very nice to be like, take the armor off and just be myself with somebody.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
I know. I'm trying to,
gosh. I know.
It's like, because to have that, that sense of safety and an environment that was provided for you, not only you personally, but that also emulated and that was created in the Last Refuge, that you like Rose created that for Kiera, and you were able to create that for her.
Yeah. Yeah. And Minalena, I think always too, it's like as an author, you're like, okay, well, how much do I want to put in? But I think sometimes pieces of your heart just fall in and you're like, well, they're there. Like, and so for her, like, I dedicated the book to her, and it's like, hey, you may not be here physically, but you are here spiritually. And like so much of you lives in the story. So she's
read it. She's read it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, she's totally read it. She's like, this is, wow, yeah, like all of those talks, they actually, they hit. You listened, like you heard. Yeah.
Well, and we're talking about this relationship, this sense of safety, this sense of like, family. This is family, and then throughout the course of your book, it's not a spoiler, we lose that. And that is taken from us. And we are crossing a threshold into this new world and this new situation that Kiera has to deal with, from like, the rest of the book, kind of from this situation on. Yeah. And we have met and do meet and continue to interact with some really fantastic characters in this section of our world, our magical section here. And we have some pretty fantastic female characters here. These characters are so strong, and they were such a delight to read. Can you tell us a little bit about Adeline and where this kind of idea came from?
And let us know if we're not saying anything right.
Yeah, we'll fix it.
That's Adeline is, yep. So I think she is a combination of my best friends. Like I can't say that she's not. I got very lucky. I met my first best friend, Asia, in my senior year of high school. And then 6 months later, I met my best friend, Caitlin. And I was having a tough time with trying to find my people. And so those two women, gosh, there would have been no book without them. And so I really channeled the snarkiness, the nicknames, the banter, just the beautiful compassion, from them. And I think that idea, Adeline is also her own person, but I couldn't not draw from these two incredible women in this friendship, because my life wouldn't be my life without my best friends. It just would not. I call them my flame holders, because you have friends that fan your flame, but these women will protect my flame. They are my ride or die. So I think a lot of that strong friendship came from them. And now Adeline has taken on her own personality, but it definitely started from Caitlin and Asia. So
I love it. And I love the relationship, the friendship, the joy, the comfort, and also the kind of explanation of our magical world that Adeline gives us, because we're not just hanging out. Right. We're not just hanging out in our magical world. We have something going on. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I think what's really incredible about Adeline is like without saying too much, there's this connection between the two of them. And Adeline sees, I think, herself in Kiera. She sees a situation that happened to her and she feels for her. And she's like, I'm going to give you all the knowledge that I can to help you be successful. Like, hey, sirens, they sing, watch your ears. Like, she's definitely giving her as much information as she can in a very short amount of time to help Kiera in this horrible situation that she stumbled her way into. So I think that is really beautiful, because I think for them, it also made me very giddy, like their friendship, because I don't want to spoil too much, but they start out as friends and there's some breadcrumbs there. And I think that's why that friendship starts out so strong is I think, again, Adeline sees herself in Kiera. She wants to help her, prepare her for these trials she's about to go through. And I think there's also this kind of curiosity between the two of them. And Adeline immediately feels very drawn to Kiera.
Yeah, there's also like a sense of selflessness that Adeline has because, like you said, like she gets nothing out of befriending this person that she doesn't know. She doesn't know what like the MO is. And it's, you know, and even Kiera's a better person than me because she's like, oh, I'm going to give this person, like they can tap out. I won't kill him. I don't know. It goes back to like even earlier in the book where you're thinking of these situations, you're kind of brought into life or death most of the part. That some actions are, you know, no, but there's a lot of gray area and everybody gets it. Like, no, you're like, I understand the choices you made and I'm not holding and I'm not going to think less of you either. And I guess that goes also with like the unconditional friendships and love that are, you know, conveyed in the story.
Right. And I think for Adeline, it is really interesting because I think for her, she definitely dabbles more in the gray than Kiera does. I think that's why she's so helpful to Kiera too. She's like, she's not afraid to tell Kiera, go for the jugular. And Kiera's like, whoa, okay. Like, but I do think Kiera, that's why, because Kiera has a very strong moral compass and she's very compassionate. And I think that's why both of these characters are really good for each other because I think Adeline's like, hey, you need to stand up, like step into your power. And I think Kiera's like, hey, like, it's okay to dream. Like, it's okay to hope. And Adeline's more like, no, like I've been there, done that. Like I'm just trying to survive. Like I'm trying to get through it. You need to as well. But that's why I think they're both so very good for each other and why they balance each other very well is because you've got somebody who may help Kiera get through these gray times and realize like, hey, like you're still worthy. These are choices we were forced into. Like, let me help you work through them. And whereas Kiera's like, hey, like let's dream together. Like, let's see what we can do and make an impact on this world. So that's why I just love the two of them and their dynamic together.
You have a villain here and shockingly for ACOFAE, not a hot villain that we're in love with. I mean, talk about out of the ordinary. This one really, I was like, maybe, no. We got a villain here. Can you kind of like, where did this villain kind of come from? Mm-hmm. And I mean, he's very good. He's very villainous, and the plot is very villainous. But like, where did he kind of come from? What's his angle?
You know, I imagined I did imagine like a very, very pretty exterior and a rotten core. That's really what I thought with Hallowfield. And we'll get more in book 2 of why he is the way he is. But I do think he is a character. It's like he chose a route and he's making choices to protect himself. And so at all cost, he is protecting himself. And it doesn't make it okay, but it's like, you know, he does kind of share a small part with Kiera. We get some backstory of like his curiosity of magic, which I believe they both share, but the choices that he decided he was going to make to become the person that he is and to become powerful. Because again, being the warden of Etabon is a seat of power, but this man wants more, and he is okay. I think of this as a type of character. It's like, yeah, sure, I'll sell my soul and whoever else's to get power and to feel safe. Not that he'd ever say that, but he's a very good showman. But he is willing to do anything at all costs. And I think it's just like this idea of any human being of power at all cost and who falls in your wake. Like, you're taking advantage and being cruel to 13-year-old girls. You're being cruel to really anybody. Everyone's a means to an end. And I think sometimes it's like, not to this degree, but I think Hallowfield sometimes made me be like, oh, like the choices we make sometimes to get what we want, we can all make terrible choices. It's all about choice, because Kiera can be in similar situations as Hallowfield, and she has power at her fingertips, and she's like, like, I just want to use this in the right way. I don't want to be like that, because even at one point, Adeline makes a suggestion about Kiera's power and the amount of power that she has. And there's a comparison between Kiera and Hallifield. And she's like, wait, I'm like him. And she's like, no. Like your magic is definitely different than his. So again, I think for him, it came a lot from like, you know, as characters, what are these characters willing to sacrifice to get power? And what are we willing to sacrifice to get what we want? It's just, you can go down a really dark path.
Because you can make a bad choice and not be a bad person. Because we all, like you were saying, like we can all, like maybe not the best decision, maybe we, you know, but then you have people who are just like self-serving and rotten to the core that, yeah, they actively, I don't want to say if they know it's a bad choice because it's so self-serving because that is the only decision that was going to be made. It's just always a bad one. And to people who, you know, have that gray area, who have that compassion, who have that, you know, breath of like, there has to be another way, because you know that right away with Kiera when she's like, this isn't how the government should like, you know, she's kind of like, I'm going to say like the girl from Mean Girls. She's like, I just want everybody to get along. Like that's what she wanted with her. She's like, there's so many other ways. We don't have to be pitted against each other. There are different ways to go about it. And you see that in her decisions when she, you know, is an Etabon, and you have other people who are like, hey, like, it's kind of cool seeing another decision. It's not just, you know, two options. There is a third option that not a lot of people select, and it's really cool to see it play out live time.
Yeah, like I think that's what's really beautiful. She shows like, hey, being vulnerable is not weakness. Like there is another way. And I love me some Imina. Like she's just, I love her. But yeah, like when that character says it, and I think it's also like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like, and I think Adeline hears that too. It's like, there is, you know, there is door number 1, door number 2, but sometimes there is door number 3, and door number 3 may not be the easiest. And again, like we all make, I think what sets us apart from the Hallifields of the world is we make bad choices, but we're okay to be accountable and say, hey, like I messed up. Like that wasn't my best moment. Cause we're all going to do that. It's totally normal. Kiera does that. Adeline does that. Like we have characters who are messing up left and right. I think it's just the people like Hallifield that are like, well, didn't hurt me, so I don't care. The differences between like the choices and the characters there.
We're talking about power at your fingertips. Quite literally here, we have that with stones and spells. Do you like rocks?
You know, I really got into it with this book because I always thought they were beautiful. I really have always loved like rose quartz, amethyst. I've always thought, oh, those are so beautiful. But I'm very much into the symbolism of a thing, and just to learn the backstory of like, you know, black tourmaline means protection, and rose quartz is like heart healing and love. Like I didn't know any of that. So I got all these books to learn, and I thought, what a cool element to put into an idea of a spell, like spells going into these crystals and then using them like healing crystals. So that was a really fun piece of research I did not anticipate when I started the book, but I thought, how fun. Like if anything's going to hold a spell, like I think that's really cool that these stones, these very natural elements of a world can be what is holding some of these certain spells.
I'm thinking back. I was also very much obsessed with rocks when I was a kid. I had that. It's like a thin little like gray book with all the rocks in it. So when I was reading this, I was like, oh, it like unlocked this like buried memory. I was like, I know what that looks like. It was so fun. So I just wanted to like, that was just like my own personal question that I had for you.
My naturey, like I would be outside, but it was funny. Like it's like, oh, like these all have different names, like, and they come from So I love that.
In the same vein, we have conflict here. Safe to say that there's a little bit of fighting. Are you a fighter?
Oh, not really. No, I mean I had an older brother, so I won't say that I didn't.
Yes.
Like I did. And my cousins. You know what? And I've definitely taken my fair share of kickboxing classes, which I thoroughly enjoyed. If you guys have never done kickboxing, it is fantastic. Oh, it's just like you get so much rage out. like that, as females, I don't know if it's encouraged always to like process that like anger, rage, frustration. And I think like having a kickboxing forum, like a forum like that, is a really nice way to get that out. So I wouldn't say like I didn't handle like growing up like conflict with fighting with anyone outside of my immediate family. So like I never got into scraps like out. But I definitely do think I'm the type of person who will walk in between a fight to break up a fight. I'm not afraid to do that. I have definitely done that. And I look back now like, oh my goodness. Like
I could have gotten my ass beat.
Ooh, what was I doing?
I didn't get punched a couple times. But yeah, Kiera is like a definitely more, again, and I think she's been prepped for that a little bit more. Because, she would walk like to and from school, and Rose didn't want her. Like she was a bit of a loner. And so I think her mom really prepped her for that. So I definitely think she's got more of a handle. Like my skills will not translate out. Hers do.
Well, so. and to that, like into that, when she comes back from Etabon, they have that whole course correcting of like what the trajectory of Kiera is going to be like. And we're like, okay, well, you have the scores for this. We got to pivot because we need you to be at, you can't just rely on one thing. You have to rely on everything. And that is going to be what makes you the most formidable force.
Yeah, and protect you. And I think that's like, again, like having the tools and being opened to, it's like, okay, well, I got very lucky, and that may have been magical elements, but you can't always rely on that. And that's kind of the interesting thing about all of these people who come to Etabon and all these magical creatures is they all have different talents. And it's like, you can't just like rely on like, oh, my magic is going to hang in there. Like, no, you have to be prepped. You have to like be ready. And that's why that obstacle course was so fun to like create. Like I don't know if you've ever seen, it's like when they go to like Vegas and they'll do like the obstacle courses, people will have to go through them and like, there's a whole show on it. So it was very much like, oh, like I can definitely, that's fine. I'm going to take that element and put that in here, training wise. And also you think military camp too, they go through obstacle courses, but I wanted to be intense for her. Cause again, she's, gearing up to, again, go back through some trials.
So you mentioned earlier in our discussion that you like a little bit of dystopian. There's a little bit of dystopian vibe here. And kind of part and parcel with dystopian is a little bit of undercurrent of revolution here. And as soon as Kiera steps into Etabon, there's like bubblings and rumblings. There's things going on, changes afoot, changes in the air. And our story, your story ends with like, woohoo, things are happening. Like things have happened. The villain has villainized things and we are moving towards a different story, which is lovely. We love this. We love overthrowing like the oppressor. We love the villain getting his due. Was this political part of it, this undercurrent of revolution, was that always going to be like the kind of driving force here? Or this is again just for me. Or was this more of a like emotional embrace yourself kind of story for you?
So one, I love that you said it, our story, because I love when readers, it's like, yes, it is. It's like not here anymore. Like it's out in the world. So one, thank you. That's awesome. So, and two, I think it was maybe a combination of both, because Kiera goes into this, and that's why I think other elements, like found family is very much big in the book, but I kept the romance more minimal in this one, kind of like more of like the heart fluttering, these kinds of things. Because I really wanted it to be this first novel, self-discovery, empowerment, her stepping into herself, feeling good in her own skin, embracing her power, realizing you can have power and it can be power to, not power over. And that kind of goes hand in hand. That self-discovery goes hand in hand with this era of revolution, because as she's stepping into her power, other people are realizing that they can step into theirs. So I think with the books that I've read that I like, the dystopian books that really like played an impact on me, like you think of, there's some of like the classics, like Fahrenheit 451, like burning books, what, and you look at, The Giver, but then there's obviously Hunger Games, Divergent. I really wanted to have that self-discovery and that just kind of like that beginning of the shift in how this world is going to play out, go together. So to answer the question, it was always a story of self-discovery, but I think just because of the things that are happening to the characters, it was always going to start pushing this world towards a change.
Yes. Yes. No, you love a revolution. Like, you love it. You love to see it.
I feel like my last question, I feel like I'm so far from the beginning that I'm like, I don't know if the question makes, like, it makes sense because I feel like it was answered. I was going to ask earlier, was your dream that inspired everything? That I'm assuming is like, well, now I got to factor this into Kiera, this dreaming component.
Yeah.
And like, because even with her first meet, she was like, I've seen your eyes. And Adeline's like, I've heard your voice. Like that was already, and that was like, and that's not a spoiler. It's very early on. But I was, when you were sharing how, I'm assuming like that's really, well, I have to integrate the origin story of this story for me into this.
And it's so funny because when I had written a version of the book first where she was already back at Etabon, and then I had to go back. And it's so funny when you write how sometimes Easter eggs fall into a book or fall out of you that you're like, oh, that's what that meant. And this whole dream element of like this longing, this calling, I was like, oh, like that is how the premise of this book came to be, was a dream. This whole idea of the veil between and having like these creative, magical thoughts and sharing that piece with the character. It's like, sometimes it's like, it is so obvious, like it is in your face right there. And you don't connect it till later. Cause I did not connect, like this came from a dream from me. And I think that's just a fun thing to share, of this idea of like, we're all dreamers, we're all seekers. Like I say that I came out full of longing. I don't know where I came from, but I was always somebody who just is kind of like a seeker and a dreamer. And I love that I share that with Kiera, and that a lot of characters in this book have that longing and that wanting. But yeah, I did not intend for it to play into the fact that's where the book came from. It just became a part of like this beautiful connection to her magic. And I think that I also love the idea is, even if all these people are cut off from magic, there's still a connection in your spirit. Like you may not physically have the connection, but it's still there and it's still with you. So that's kind of why I just love the whole dream element. Plus it's just such a fun, like,
and they wanted to drug you if you didn't. Yeah. That's what, like, again, another of like the oppressor suppressing.
Yes. Like if you have these dreams, they're bad. It's trauma. Don't let your kids have dreams. And it's really just another way for the ruling board to crack down. It's like, if we just keep the fear up to 10, nobody's going to ask questions. We're going to keep handle on this world. So, that's going to be really fun to play into book 2. So I'm very much excited to see, like, I don't know who's worse, the ruling board or Hallowfield. I think they're both pretty despicable. So.
Like in their own vein. And he has like so much, I don't want to say control, but like weight in in how he works with the board.
Yes. Yeah. How he manipulates them. That's the thing. It's like, kind of like we said before, it's like these beautiful, charming people can be so rotten. Like, it's like, he is just, he is very much using all of his tools to get what he wants. And there's I think, again, when you look into the kind of the breadcrumbs of his backstory and his relationship to his own father, and his father's relationship to the board, it is just really interesting. I don't want to spoil things that come out later, but it's like at the end of the book, it's like, like this is why you also have this relationship that you do with the board. So,
well, and speaking of things that come out later, we were creeping on your website. And so this is a confirmed trilogy, right? Because we saw book 2 and book 3 coming soon.
Yes. Yeah. So this will be a trilogy. I just felt like the natural cycle had to be a trilogy. So book 2, thinking end of this year, very early next year. So I will definitely release that soon. I'm actually right now.
It's so soon.
I know. And I'm emailing with, I just adore my cover artist. Like she is, that's one of my favorite parts of the publishing process is seeing like Kim Dingle is, I think I told her, you're magic. Like you are magic on this earth. So yes, I'm working on the cover 2 right now. So hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll have the cover reveal. But yes, so this will be a trilogy. And I'm very much considering, don't hold me to this, but I'm possibly thinking of kind of like the OG crowd getting a prequel. So doing a prequel of pretty much the inciting incident of how Etera came to be a planet where magic is only in one spot and kind of really the backstory of those characters. So we'll see. Definitely trilogy, possibly a prequel.
You gotta dump everything out and be like, okay, where does it fit in my storyboard?
Exactly. Yep.
Oh, that's so interesting. And now I'm wondering if your process for writing a prequel would be any different from your process from writing the trilogy. And in my, like, I have no talent. No, why would it be? You're still writing, but like, it might be. How interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's so funny you say that because like this is like if you can see like all my tabbies, because I go back and I reread the first book and I go crazy, and I think a prequel. It's interesting because you have to kind of come out like with all of that first. It's like people get the tip of an iceberg. So I don't know because I've never written a prequel, but I'm like, couldn't it be easier because you have all of this information that you spent hours and hours creating. I say that and watch it'd be the hardest one, but
yeah, you're gonna be looking, tabbing your own. You're gonna have like prequel tabs. You're like, I foreshadowed myself without even realizing I foreshadowed the past.
I love an Easter egg. It was so funny. For book 2, there's a prophecy, and it's like, oh my, like I wrote this.
It was
book
there the whole time.
The whole time, and it's like book 3. I was like, that's what that means.
It's like it is. I love that you're surprising yourself in this whole process too.
It's shocking, because there's a part in the prophecy. I'm like, no. But it is really funny because sometimes things can live in your brain, like I'm telling you, and it's right there in front of your face. And I think that's why writing is any type of art is such a beautiful thing because like people create music and write and do all these things. And it's like, oh, like that's where that's just been living in there rent free, and it came out. But yeah, I've shocked myself with things, and it's like I think that's just so fun because it's like, oh, that's one of my favorite parts is to be like, I wrote that, and I did not even know that's what that was going to be. So,
well, and you said that you know how this trilogy is going to wrap up. Mm-hmm. Was that just like one of those moments, and you just like had to write it down? And how did you feel after that? Were you just like, wow?
I was pretty emotional. Like I do think it's really funny when an idea hits me, and that's pretty much, it's very similar to the dream with Kiera, but this one I think was very intense because I knew obviously there's going to be a final image of the last book, and I knew all along like that is what I want. But this scene leading up to it was, it just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was like, sorry, book 2, like I have to actually get this out. And it's funny, like in the last couple of years, I've become more emotional than it's like, as you get older, like, what is this? And I'm just like sobbing, like writing, like, it's fine. I'm just going to work through it. But yeah, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I just thought, wow, this is where we're going to be leading up to, which I think does make book 2 much easier because you know where you're going. Plus it was really fun research. We just had here, I mean, you guys, I don't know how much you got to see of the eclipse, but where it went completely dark here. And it was really cool research because in book 3, one of like the main scenes that they're all like the culmination of everything is going to be during full eclipse. So it was really cool to get to experience that and like how the world just goes still.
And you can like pull from that like firsthand experience too. That's so cool.
I get goosebumps because it's like, it's just eerie. Like it's funny where research takes you, this idea of general relativity and that, the fact that massive objects have this effect on space and time. And then to be in an event like that where the world just goes dark and like crickets stop chirping and it's just silent.
I definitely want to travel for I only had like 92% and that was kind of wild. So I do want to be in the totality of like the next one we get here.
Just it going dark, like, cause you don't know, you're like, okay, it's going to get dusky. No.
And you see like video, like, but to be in it, I feel like it's completely different.
And it's funny because people will talk about like, do you go to places? And after experiencing the eclipse, because I've also gone to Sedona to like, because they're like the vortex is something kind of in my book. And it's like actually going and feeling like energy is very like, ooh, like, I don't know, you can't not deny that physical feeling of these events. The eclipse blew me away, and I'm like, and that's, I think, why that scene was just like, you need to write me right now, because of that feeling.
Laura, I think your mom talks about Sedona and the vortex all the time. She's like, I hadn't gone, and we had gone together with her mom, and she's like, there's this energy, and I was like, what are you talking about? But like, I get it, but like, I think it was when I was just like, okay, like, until you had experienced something like that. So the fact that you're like finding these little pockets, like to just kind of like be still is really, really cool.
I call it like, and they've said like when I read articles, it's like, they call it a thin place. And I think that's like, ooh, that's like fun. That's woo woo. But it really is like when you go to like, you're standing, cause like me and my best friend, it's so funny. We went to Sedona. That was one of the trips we took, and we're just standing. Like, we are definitely not hikers, so maybe we were just really winded, but we're standing on just like these gorgeous red rocks. And just like, just this vast open space. And it's like, you get goosebumps. Like, how could you not? The world is just this beautiful, incredible place. And that's why I think magic is just so easy to write, because, it's not, okay, we're not casting spells and riding dragons and like, like cooking dinner without having to do anything, but there's just so much beauty. Like, it's just really like with that eclipse messed me up. Like, I'm telling you, like,
that's so cool.
Easy to write that scene after that.
Are you in that, like, now you're like, okay, well, when's the next one? Cause it's not going to be where I live.
Yeah, well, it's like, it's
the one
like,
in, I guess, like in the US, because like they're like, oh, you can travel to this one in 2 years. I'm like,
yeah, exactly. What's like, well, and it's funny because I'm like, man, depending when is the next one, because it would be really fun. I'm not going to do that, but it'd be fun to release a third book on an eclipse day.
That would be cool.
Like, we'll see what happens. I'll have to look into it. But yeah, like now it's like, are we going to be chasing eclipses? Like,
that's your high. You're like, I got to do it.
Yeah, got to get that feeling back.
I'm just thinking of Twister, Storm Chaser.
A Storm Chaser, like an eclipse chaser. Title of like book, like a whole new spinoff. We're going to have like a whole eclipse series.
That'd be way less intense though, because you have like 3 years to like.
I don't know. The Thin Place, the Vampire Diaries, like Bonnie's all about that.
Yes. Oh God, how painful, like being that doorway, like being a gateway. That's, if you had to pick, if you're picking powers, it's like, that's a rough one. But I admire you. You're strong.
Justice for Bonnie Bennett and Cat Graham.
Justice for Bonnie Bennett. Oh my gosh. This has been so fun. This has been absolutely incredible. You have already given us a lot of teasers for book 2 and book 3. And I am just in awe of how quickly that next book is going to come out. That is amazing. Do you have any like things coming up, upcoming projects?
Where can we find you?
Yeah. Connect with us.
Yeah. So to find me, I'm on Instagram. It's Christina Bacilieri, TikTok, Christina Bacilieri author. And then my website is Christina Bacilieri. And then right now I am just hunkered down writing. So I don't have any plans for like events. That may be subject to change because I mean, even as a reader, going to events is so fun. So we shall see. But I actually do have something very fun. I got what's called a BookBub deal. So my ebook is going to be on sale May 30th to June 2nd on Amazon, Kobo, and Apple Books. And it's normally $9.99, so it's going to be 99 cents. So I've never done that before. So it's very exciting. So yes, if you're stuffing your Kindle, jump on that. It's going to be, so it is certain places. It's US, Canada, Australia, and the UK. So if you're a Kindle reader, please feel free to grab that the May 30th through June 2nd.
And we'll make sure we link that in our socials because this episode will be airing in that window that it starts going on sale. So that's going to be great.
Yes, so I'm very excited. I know sometimes things just work out perfectly and they align. So I thought that was very cool. I was like, wow, this works perfect.
It's great. Well, thanks for taking the time, Christina. You're welcome back here anytime. So let us know. This is your episode. This is your platform. Thank you again. Christina Bacilieri, the author of The Last Refuge, which is a confirmed trilogy.
Thank you guys. It has been so much fun. I was not disappointed. I knew this was going to be a blast, and you guys definitely delivered. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.
And as Christina said, make sure that you check her out on all of her socials. We'll make sure we have those in the show notes. And also please feel to follow us on Instagram. We're at ACOFAE Podcast. And we're also both on TikTok, ACOFAE Laura and ACOFAE Jessica. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.